Now, before we learn our very last factoring strategy on day 2 of this part 4 PowerPoint, we have to be comfortable seeing any single type of quadratic equation and knowing how to organize the strategies from quadratics 1, 2, and 3 to find the solutions. So we're going to go through these one at a time, making sure we have good strategy development of how to solve it. First thing I notice is I have an n squared and some regular n's here. So I know that means I need one side equal to 0 because I have both n squared and regular n. So I'm going to subtract 8n, so that's regular n there. I'm going to subtract 8n here because they're like terms. Like terms must have the same variable and exponent, and these are both regular n's, not n squared. So n squared, 5n minus 8n is negative 3n. Equals 28. Now I'll subtract the 28. I notice these are not like terms because they don't have the same variable. So I'm just going to write all 3 of these items on one line. 28 minus 28 is 0. So now we're ready to go factor. This strategy here, this box method, we call this factoring. So we put n squared in the top box, the negative 28 there. Now we have to figure out how do we break that negative 3n into 2 separate boxes for our factors. So we will ask ourselves what multiplies to the last number, including its sign, and what adds or subtracts to the middle number, including its sign. So what multiplies to negative 28, but adds or subtracts to negative 3? Negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. Negative 7 plus 4 is negative 3. So I know this is negative 7n and 4n. And now we can start filling in the box. The only way to get n squared is n times n. So then n times negative 7 is negative 7n. N times 4 is 4n. And then that checks out. 4 times negative 7 is negative 28. So now we have our factors. When we successfully get our parentheses like this, that's what we call our factors. Remember, factors, guys, just mean something multiplies back to the original. And since there's nothing in between those two parentheses, n plus 4 is one factor, n minus 7 is the other factor. Now we set each factor equal to 0 and keep on solving. The first thing I notice is number 2 also has r squared and regular r. So I need one side equal to 0. So I'll subtract 2r squared. And since that's r squared, I'll line that up with the only r squared I see over here to get 3r squared plus 126 is equal to, don't forget guys, that's a negative 39r. That negative goes with it since it comes right before. Don't forget that negative. Now we'll add that 39r over here. But if we notice, there's not a regular r over here. So I'm just going to write those next to each other. Now I notice that I have a number with r squared, where I didn't have that in my first problem. Whenever you arrive and you have a number with your squared variable, we have to see, is that number a GCF? Meaning, can I divide every single number by that 3 and get a nice whole number? So let's try. When we factor out a GCF, we set it up like distribution. Whatever number we're trying to divide out, we have to organize as distribution. 3 divided by 3 is 1r squared. 39 divided by 3 is 13r plus 126 divided by 3. 3 can't go into 1, but 3 can go into 12 4 times. 4 times 3 is 12. Bring down the 6. 3 goes into 6 2 times. So we know this will be plus 42. So I divided everything by that 3 to see if I can simplify this. And now we're going to ignore that 3 and see if we can factor that nice quadratic inside the parentheses. So we'll set up our box. We get our r squared, we get our 42. Now how do we split up that 13r? Well, what multiplies to the last number and what adds or subtracts to the middle? I know 6 times 7 is 42, 6 plus 7 is 13. So that becomes 6r and 7r. And now we can start breaking it down. The only way to get r squared is r times r. R times 6 is 6r. R times 7 is 7r. 7 times 6 is still 42. So our factors are r plus 6 times r plus 7. These are our 1, 2 factors. And now to get our solution, we set them equal to 0 and solve. So up here we have our factors. Then when you actually solve them, down here we have the solutions. So with number 3, this one's different from number 1 and 2. I only see x squared. I don't see a regular variable. There's no regular x. So if I only see x squared, that means I can solve this like part 2 using square roots. So this is the only one where I don't need both sides equal to 0. I need to isolate x. So I still need my x squareds to the same side. So I'll subtract negative 4x from each side, x squared. And I get x squared minus 14 equals 2. Now since I only have x squared, I don't want one side equal to 0. I can isolate this using inverse operations. So I'll add that 14 over to the other side. And now we just have to remember, what's the only way to get rid of an exponent, a squared, is the square root. And so we have x equals 4, because 4 times 4 is 16, or negative 4, because negative 4 times negative 4 is also 16. So we didn't have to factor for number 3. Since it was just x squared, we could solve this with square roots. As long as we remember, every time you take a square root, you get a positive and negative answer. Last one down here. I notice that I have an m squared and an m, so I need one side equal to 0. Okay, so we end up with 8m squared plus 32m equals 4m minus 4m is 0. Now if you notice, this one's different as there's no constant, there's no number at the end. So we can go jump right into a box, but it's an even simpler box this time. It's just gonna be a 2-boxer. 8m squared, and then the 32m. Now when you wanna break down how to get to 8m squared, you wanna see if you can take out the biggest number possible to get to that 8 and 32. So I'm gonna see if I can pull an 8 and an m out here, and an m up there. M times 8m is 8m squared. So then 8m times what will get us to 32m? Oh, a 4. So then it works out. You should always try to take as big of a number from here as possible. You might have to do some guess and check. So then we just have 8m times m plus 4. And those are our 2 factors. 8m is still a factor because it has a variable. So that still needs to be equal to 0 when we solve. This time we divide that by 8. So one solution is m equals 0. And over here we'll subtract by 4 to get m equals negative 4. Up here are our 2 factors. Down here are our 2 solutions.